Jasmine Taylor's trembling knees hit the cold marble floor of Westridge County Courthouse as Judge Harrison Whitmore's gavel slammed down. "You will kneel until you learn respect," the white-haired judge sneered, while the officers who had brutalized her stood smirking. Her attorney, Diana Chen, gasped in horror. What nobody in that courtroom knew, hidden in Jasmine's bracelet was a micro-recorder capturing everything, and across town, her cousin Marcus was hacking into the courthouse security system. The timer on his screen showed 5 minutes until broadcast. Justice would arrive. But at what cost? Before we begin this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from, and if you believe in standing up for justice against corruption, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more eye-opening stories that expose the truth. Jasmine Taylor wasn't just an ordinary 16-year-old. At Westridge Academy, where the gleaming hallways were filled predominantly with wealthy white students, she stood out not just because of her brown skin, but because of her brilliance. Computer science was her sanctuary, her fingers flying across keyboards with the kind of intuition that made even senior instructors pause. MIT wasn't just a dream for her. It was a target she aimed for with laser precision, the kind of focus she'd developed after losing both parents in a devastating car accident 3 years ago. Her grandmother, Elaine Taylor, a retired nurse with arthritis-bent fingers but an unbending spirit, had raised her to believe that excellence was the only answer to adversity. The annual Westridge Hackathon should have been Jasmine's moment of triumph. After months of preparation, her project on predictive algorithms for traffic safety had impressed the judges during preliminary rounds. But as she made her final adjustments before the championship presentation, Tyler Whitmore sauntered over to her workstation. The son of Judge Harrison Whitmore, Tyler carried himself with the entitlement of someone who'd never heard the word no. "Impressive work," he said, eyeing her screen with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Almost too impressive for someone from your background." Jasmine ignored him, focusing on her code. 20 minutes later, as she prepared to present, Principal Stevens approached with security guards flanking him. "Ms. Taylor, we need to speak with you privately," he said, his voice carrying across the auditorium. Curious eyes followed as she was escorted out. In Stevens' office, the accusation hit her like a physical blow. "We have reason to believe you've cheated," he said, sliding a printout across his mahogany desk. "This code matches an advanced MIT project from last year." "That's impossible," Jasmine protested, her heart racing. "I can walk through every line I wrote." "Tyler Whitmore discovered the similarity," Stevens continued, ignoring her. "As the son of one of our most distinguished alumni and generous donors, his integrity is beyond question." Despite presenting evidence that the similarities were basic, framework components used in all similar projects, despite offering to code sections from scratch right there to prove her abilities, despite her spotless academic record, Principal Stevens had made his decision. She was banned from the competition, her project disqualified. "We'll be discussing your future at Westridge," he added coldly. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for academic dishonesty." The next week became a nightmare. Security guards followed her between classes. Teachers who had once praised her work now regarded her with suspicion. Students whispered as she passed. Only Mr. Rodriguez, her computer science teacher, seemed troubled by the accusation, but even his support was muted by administrative pressure. While working late in the library, combing through school handbook policies for appeal procedures, Jasmine accidentally accessed an unlocked administrative server. What she found stunned her. Systematic reallocation of minority scholarship funds to legacy priority candidates like Tyler Whitmore. For 3 years, qualified students of color had been denied financial aid, while wealthy white students received merit scholarships funded by diversity grants. Determined to gather evidence, Jasmine used her after-hours lab access to document the financial discrepancies. She was so focused on downloading proof that she didn't hear the security door open until flashlights blinded her. "Hands where we can see them!" barked Officer Brandt, a muscular white man with a crew cut and cold eyes. His partner, Officer Delaney, immediately grabbed Jasmine's arms, wrenching them behind her back. "You're hurting me!" she cried out as handcuffs bit into her wrists. "Shut your mouth," Delaney hissed. breaking and entering, computer trespassing, attempted hacking of school records. You're in serious trouble, girl. As they dragged her out, she saw Principal Stevens watching from the doorway, arms crossed. And behind him, smirking with satisfaction, stood Tyler Whitmore. "Check her bag," Stevens directed. Officer Brandt emptied her backpack, producing a flash drive Jasmine had never seen before. "Hacking tools," he announced, though Jasmine knew it had been planted. As they pushed her into the police cruiser, Jasmine caught a final glimpse of the school where she'd once felt safe. Through tears, she realized this had never been about a hackathon at all. She'd stumbled onto something much bigger, and powerful people were determined to silence her. Have you ever wondered how quickly your rights can disappear once you're labeled as trouble? For Jasmine Taylor, the answer was terrifyingly swift. The holding cell at Westridge County Police Station smelled of bleach and despair. Jasmine's wrists throbbed where the handcuffs had cut into her skin, leaving angry red welts. Despite repeated requests, no medical attention came. Instead, the desk sergeant had laughed when she asked for treatment, saying, "You'll have plenty of time to heal where you're going." 2 hours later, Detective John Reynolds entered her cell. A veteran officer with 20 years on the force, his face showed nothing but contempt as he dropped a heavy file folder on the metal table. "Jasmine Taylor," he read aloud, "age 16 but being charged as an adult for computer crimes, breaking and entering, theft of confidential information, and attempted distribution of stolen data. Felony charges that carry up to 15 years. He leaned forward, his coffee breath hot on her face. "Kiss your fancy college dreams goodbye." "I was framed," Jasmine said firmly, though her voice shook. "I had permission to use the lab. Someone planted that flash drive." Reynolds's laugh was cold. "Always the same excuses with you people, never taking responsibility." "You people?" Jasmine questioned. The detective ignored her. "Sign this confession and we'll talk about reducing charges. Otherwise, you're spending the weekend in county lockup with the adults." It was nearly midnight when Diana Chen burst into the station. A friend of Jasmine's grandmother and a civil rights attorney known for taking on police misconduct cases, Chen's reputation preceded her. "Where is she?" she demanded. "Jasmine Taylor, a minor, arrested without parental notification." When she finally saw Jasmine, Chen's professional composure cracked momentarily. "What happened to your wrists? Have you received medical attention?" "They refused," Jasmine whispered. Chen turned to the booking officer. "I want to see the arrest record. Immediately." The officer reluctantly pulled up the file. "Says here she's 18. "That's a lie," Jasmine exclaimed. "My student ID was in my wallet. It shows my birth date." Chen pulled out her phone, displaying a digital copy of Jasmine's birth certificate. "She is 16 years old. You've violated multiple protocols for juvenile detention. Where's the warrant for her arrest?" The booking officer exchanged glances with Detective Reynolds, who had appeared in the doorway. "Computer system must have glitched," Reynolds said smoothly. "As for the warrant, there was reasonable cause for immediate detainment." "Show me the evidence that justified this arrest," Chen pressed. "Evidence is being processed," Reynolds replied. "Unfortunately, some of the digital materials appear to be corrupted." "How convenient," Chen said coldly. "I'm taking my client home now. You've made multiple procedural errors that would invalidate any evidence collected." Reynolds stepped closer, towering over the attorney. "Ms. Chen, troublemakers like her don't deserve the rights you're so concerned about. This isn't just about school rules. She accessed restricted information." "Then charge her properly and present your evidence in court," Chen replied. "Until then, you're holding a minor illegally." As they prepared to leave, Jasmine overheard two officers talking around the corner. "Judge Whitmore's not gonna like this," one said quietly. "Don't worry," the other replied. "Reynolds knows how to handle it. The judge already has a plan to teach her a lesson about challenging people like him." "What about her lawyer?" "Chen, she's been a thorn in the side of the Westridge Preservation Society for years. They've been looking for a way to shut her down too." Jasmine tugged at Chen's sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. "Ms. Chen, they mentioned Judge Whitmore and something called the Westridge Preservation Society. They're working together." Chen's Expression grew grave. The society is supposedly a historical preservation group, but there have been rumors. Get in the car. We need to talk somewhere safe. What would you do if you discovered the police, judges, and school officials were, all part of a secret organization working against people like you? Comment number 1 if you think Jasmine should expose them immediately, or number 2 if she should gather more evidence first. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support stories that expose systemic injustice. But as Jasmine and Ms. Chen leave the police station, neither of them realizes they're being followed. What dangers await them next? And just how deep does this conspiracy go? The Westridge County Courthouse loomed like a fortress, its classical columns and marble steps projecting an aura of impartial justice that Jasmine now knew was a facade. Despite Diana Chen's best efforts to delay proceedings until they could build a proper defense, Judge Harrison Whitmore had ordered an immediate hearing, citing public safety concerns. "Remember," Chen whispered as they climbed the steps, "answer only what you're asked, stay calm, and let me handle the legal arguments." Jasmine nodded, her stomach knotting. She'd barely slept, haunted by fragments of conversation she'd overheard at the station. The Westridge Preservation Society. Judge Whitmore's plan. Something bigger than a school hackathon or even scholarship fraud. The courtroom fell silent as they entered. Judge Whitmore presided from his elevated bench, silver hair perfectly coiffed, his black robes immaculate. His resemblance to his son Tyler was striking. The same cold blue eyes, the same thin smile that never reached those eyes. Officers Brandt and Delaney stood near the prosecution table, along with Detective Reynolds. "Case number 47293, Westridge County versus Jasmine Taylor," the bailiff announced. Judge Whitmore peered over his reading glasses. "Ms. Taylor, how unfortunate to see a young person from our community involved in such serious offenses." Chen stepped forward. "Your Honor, we request this matter be transferred to juvenile court, as my client is 16 years old." Documentation presented. "To this court indicates otherwise," Whitmore replied without looking at the papers. "Motion denied." Chen began to object when the court reporter raised her hand. "Your Honor, I'm having technical issues with my transcription equipment." "Proceed without recording temporarily," Whitmore instructed, then turned back to Jasmine. "Ms. Taylor, you've been accused of serious computer crimes against a prestigious educational institution. How do you plead?" Before Chen could intervene, Jasmine spoke. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I was framed after discovering evidence of discrimination and financial fraud." The judge's expression hardened. "Save your conspiracy theories. This court deals in facts, not fantasies conjured by individuals looking to excuse their actions." "Your Honor," Chen interjected, "the prosecution has failed to provide discovery of any evidence supporting these charges. We move for immediate dismissal." "Overruled," Whitmore snapped. "The sensitive nature of the compromised systems requires additional security protocols before evidence can be released." For the next 20 minutes, Chen's every objection was summarily overruled. The prosecutor, a young man who barely spoke, simply nodded along as the judge effectively made the state's case himself. When Chen cited legal precedents, Whitmore dismissed them as inapplicable. "Your Honor," Chen persisted, "this proceeding violates my client's constitutional rights in multiple ways." Whitmore's gavel came down hard. "Ms. Chen, your theatrics are trying my patience. Perhaps in your usual circles, such disrespect for judicial authority is tolerated, but not in my courtroom." The court reporter's equipment conveniently began working again as the judge continued. "Ms. Taylor," Whitmore said, leaning forward, "I've reviewed your school records. Despite your academic achievements, there seems to be a pattern of challenging authority. Principal Stevens reports multiple incidents of disruptive behavior." "That's not true," Jasmine replied, struggling to maintain composure. "Your Honor, those allegations are not part of any filed charges," Chen objected. "I'm establishing character relevance," Whitmore countered. "It's concerning how certain types of students enter institutions like Westridge Academy and immediately begin causing trouble instead of showing gratitude for the opportunity." "Certain types of students?" Jasmine echoed, unable to contain herself. "You mean black students, don't you, Your Honor?" A hush fell over the courtroom. Whitmore's face flushed crimson. "Your kind always rush to make everything about race," he hissed, momentarily forgetting the crowded courtroom. "This is about respect for institutions and traditions that maintained order long before you arrived." "Your Honor," Jasmine replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "With all due respect, your statement itself demonstrates bias that should disqualify you from presiding over this case." The gavel came down with such force that it cracked. "You will show this court proper respect," Whitmore shouted. "Officers, ensure that Ms. Taylor understands her position." Officers Brandt and Delaney immediately moved toward Jasmine. "On your knees," Brandt ordered, grabbing her shoulder. "Your Honor, this is outrageous," Chen exclaimed. "Ms. Chen, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt," Whitmore warned. "Ms. Taylor will kneel before this court until she learns respect for the justice system." As rough hands forced her downward, Jasmine made a split-second decision. The delicate bracelet her grandmother had given her for her 16th birthday contained more than sentimental value. Hidden inside the decorative charm was a micro-recorder that Marcus had modified for her after previous incidents of harassment at school had gone undocumented. With a subtle movement of her finger, she activated it. Across town, in his apartment filled with computer equipment, Marcus Taylor watched the live stream from the courthouse security cameras he'd hacked into. A talented programmer who'd been teaching his cousin Jasmine since she was 12, he'd been monitoring the situation since her arrest. What he saw now made his blood boil. Fingers flying across his keyboard, he initiated the protocol they'd established for emergencies. 5 minutes, he muttered, watching the upload bar slowly fill. "Hold on, Jasmine." Back in the courtroom, Jasmine knelt on the hard marble, head unbowed, eyes locked with Judge Whitmore's. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition. He saw that she wasn't broken, and she saw that he knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't accidental bias or misunderstanding. It was deliberate, systematic oppression. And in 5 minutes, everyone would know it too. Marcus Taylor hit the final key with triumphant force. Within seconds, the courthouse feed, including the clear audio captured by Jasmine's concealed recorder, began streaming to every major social media platform simultaneously. His custom algorithm instantly tagged influential civil rights accounts, news outlets, and legal watchdog groups. In the courtroom, the first hint of what was happening came when spectators' phones began buzzing and chiming with notifications. Heads bent over screens, eyes widened, and whispers spread like wildfire. A court clerk hurried to Judge Whitmore, showing him something on a tablet that drained the color from his face. "This court is in recess," he announced abruptly, slamming his gavel. "Clear the room immediately." But it was too late. Outside the courthouse, news vans were already pulling up, reporters rushing from vehicles with cameras rolling. Our justice for Jasmine was trending nationwide. The footage of a black teenage girl forced to kneel before a white judge after challenging his racist remarks sparking outrage across the country. Diana Chen, immediately grasping the situation, stood tall. "Your Honor, in light of your demonstrated bias and abuse of judicial power, we demand immediate dismissal of all charges against my client and your recusal from any further proceedings." Jasmine, still kneeling, felt a surge of strength. The secret recording had captured everything, not just Whitmore's explicit bias, but the procedural violations, the denied objections, the convenient technical issues with the court reporter's equipment. Rising slowly to her feet despite Officer Brandt's hand attempting to keep her down, she met the judge's furious gaze. "This proceeding is adjourned," Whitmore shouted, yanking off his robes as he retreated toward his chambers. "Bailiff, confiscate all recording devices." But the live stream continued from the courthouse's own security system, broadcasting his retreat to thousands of viewers growing by the second. Outside, as Chen guided Jasmine through the gathering crowd, reporters thrust microphones toward them. "Ms. Taylor, how long has this type of treatment been happening?" called one journalist. "Ms. Chen, will you be filing civil rights violations against Judge Whitmore and the court?" asked another. Chen raised a hand for quiet. "My client has been subjected to systematic discrimination and judicial misconduct. The video evidence speaks for itself." We will be addressing the press formally after ensuring Ms. Taylor's safety. As they pushed through to Chen's car, Jasmine's phone exploded with notifications. Messages of support, interview requests, and statements from civil rights organizations condemning her treatment and calling for Judge Whitmore's removal poured in. For the first time since this ordeal began, Jasmine felt a spark of hope. The truth was out. That spark dimmed considerably when they arrived at her grandmother's modest home that evening. The front windows had been shattered, and spray-painted across the door were the words, "Race traitors die." Inside, furniture had been overturned, family photos smashed. "Grandma!" Jasmine called out in panic, rushing through the vandalized rooms until she found Elaine Taylor huddled in the bathroom, shaking but physically unharmed. "They came about an hour ago," the elderly woman whispered. "Two men in masks. They said this was just a warning, that we didn't know who we were dealing with." As Chen called the police, different jurisdiction, hopefully less corrupted, Jasmine's phone lit up with anonymous messages. "Should have stayed on your knees where you belong. Your grandmother looks frail. Shame if something happened to her. The Preservation Society has protected Westridge for 80 years. You'll be gone long before we are." Each message came from different anonymous accounts, untraceable, but the coordinated timing made it clear. This was an organized response. The public might be rallying behind her, but powerful forces in Westridge were mobilizing against her. "We can't stay here," Chen decided, helping Elaine gather essential medications. "I have a friend with a secure apartment who can take you in temporarily." As they prepared to leave, Jasmine's phone rang. It was Marcus. "They're trying to trace the stream," he said without preamble. "They've already been to my building asking questions. I'm going dark for a while, but I've sent all the evidence to secure backup locations. Be careful, Jazz. These people, they're more connected than we thought." Jasmine swallowed hard. What should we do now? There was a pause before her cousin answered. "Keep fighting. The truth is out there now. Just watch your back, because they're definitely watching you." As they drove away from the vandalized house, Jasmine watched news helicopters circling over the courthouse. The story was going national, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. She had exposed the judge's racism and abuse of power to the world, but the retaliation had been swift and coordinated. For every ally stepping forward publicly, shadowy figures were moving against her behind the scenes. The question wasn't just whether justice would prevail, but whether she and her loved ones would survive to see it. Can you imagine discovering that the entire system designed to protect justice is actually working against you? What would you do if the people with power used every resource at their disposal to crush you for simply exposing the truth? The emergency meeting in Judge Whitmore's private chambers crackled with tension. Police Chief Robert Garrison paced the room, his bulky frame casting long shadows in the dim lighting. District Attorney Victor Thompson sat stiffly in a leather chair, while Principal Stevens stood nervously by the window, peering through the blinds at the media circus below. "Do you realize what you've done?" Chief Garrison growled at Whitmore. "That video has over 2 million views already. Civil rights groups are calling for federal investigations." Whitmore slammed his fist on the desk. "I did what we've always done. How was I supposed to know the little troublemaker had recording equipment?" "Gentlemen," DA Thompson interjected smoothly, "recriminations won't solve our current problem. We need to control the narrative immediately." Principal Stevens nodded eagerly. "What if we present evidence that she cheated at the hackathon? Show she has a history of dishonesty?" "Not enough," Thompson replied. "We need something more damaging, something that undermines both her character and the recording itself." Chief Garrison stopped pacing, a slow smile spreading across his face. "She's a computer prodigy, right? What if this whole thing was an elaborate hacking scheme? What if she manipulated the courtroom footage to make us look bad? Can we prove that?" Whitmore asked. "We don't need to prove it conclusively," Thompson said. "We just need to create reasonable doubt in the public mind. Plant the seed that maybe this isn't racism, but a sophisticated attempt to attack our justice system by a troubled teen with advanced hacking skills. My brother-in-law owns Channel 7. Whitmore added, reaching for his phone. We'll start there, then use our contacts to spread the counter-narrative. Within hours, the local news was running an exclusive investigation, questioning Jasmine's character and motives. The anchor, a polished woman with practiced concern in her voice, asked viewers, "Is this a case of judicial misconduct or a calculated attack on our institutions by a student with a troubling history?" The segment featured interviews with carefully selected teachers and students who described Jasmine as secretive, intense, and obsessed with computer security. Tyler Whitmore appeared on screen, looking appropriately troubled as he recounted discovering her alleged cheating. "I didn't want to believe it," he said with rehearsed sincerity. But the evidence was right there. Next came technology experts, actually IT staff from the courthouse, who explained how video footage could be manipulated, audio spliced together to create false impressions. What looks like bias could actually be clever editing, one claimed. Watching from their temporary safe house, Jasmine felt physically ill. "They're turning everything upside down," she whispered to Diana Chen. "Making me the villain." Chen switched off the television. Standard playbook. When powerful people are exposed, they attack the whistleblower's credibility. Before Jasmine could respond, her grandmother gasped, pointing at the window. Red and blue lights flashed outside. A swarm of police vehicles had surrounded the building. "Westridge County Police, we have a warrant." The pounding on the door was immediate and aggressive. Chen quickly reviewed the document thrust at her. "This warrant is for all electronic devices belonging to Jasmine Taylor in connection with suspected cybercrimes against county systems." "Stand aside, counselor," ordered the lead officer, pushing past her. 8 officers swarmed the apartment, upending furniture, dumping drawers. They seized Jasmine's phone, laptop, even her calculator. When Elaine Taylor asked to see identification from one officer roughly searching her medications, she was shoved aside, falling hard against the wall. "Grandma!" Jasmine rushed to her side as the elderly woman clutched her chest, face contorted in pain. "She needs medical attention," Chen demanded, pulling out her phone to call an ambulance. An officer snatched the phone from her hand. "That's evidence too. Ms. Chen, we have reason to believe you were complicit in illegal recording within a federal courthouse." As paramedics finally arrived for Elaine, who was now barely conscious, Jasmine tried to accompany her grandmother to the hospital. "She's all I have," she pleaded. "You're not going anywhere," Chief Garrison announced, entering the apartment. "We have more questions about your hacking activities." Chen intervened. "My client is a minor. You cannot question her without legal representation." "Interesting you should mention her age," Garrison replied with a cold smile. "We've received formal notification from Westridge Academy that Jasmine Taylor has been expelled for criminal activity, effective immediately. Without student status, her provisional residency in Westridge County is revoked." The blood drained from Jasmine's face. Her grandmother's subsidized apartment was tied to her enrollment at Westridge Academy. They weren't just attacking her reputation, they were trying to make her homeless. As Elaine was wheeled out on a stretcher, a police officer blocked Jasmine from following. "The hospital will update you on her condition," he said mechanically. Hours later, exhausted and frightened, Jasmine and Chen retreated to the attorney's office to regroup. There, more bad news awaited. A formal letter from the State Bar Association informed Chen she was under investigation for ethical violations related to unauthorized recording of court proceedings and interference with the administration of justice. "They're trying to disbar me," Chen said quietly. Jasmine's phone would have been buzzing constantly with notifications had it not been confiscated. Colleges that had been actively recruiting her were sending emails withdrawing interest, the carefully cultivated online presence showcasing her. Coding projects had been flooded with harassment and threats. Friends from school sent screenshots of an internal email from Principal Stevens warning parents about dangerous associations with the troubled former student. Meanwhile, Marcus had gone completely off-grid after police raided his apartment. The last message she'd received from him had been a hasty warning. "They're tracing everything. Don't trust any electronics. Old-school methods only." "They're systematically destroying my life," Jasmine whispered. the full weight of the situation crushing down on her. All because I exposed the truth. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. That's exactly why we can't give up. The fact that they're responding with this level of force means they're terrified of what else you might uncover. Have you ever felt the system turn against you for standing up for what's right? Comment number 1, if you think Jasmine should fight back even harder. Or number 2, if you think the risk is too great and she should try to make a deal. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe powerful institutions should be held accountable. But even as Jasmine and Diana Chen try to figure out their next move, the Westridge Preservation Society is implementing the next phase of their plan. How far will they go to silence one teenage girl? And is there anyone left who can help her when it seems like every official institution is compromised? The basement classroom in the abandoned community center hadn't seen students in years, but tonight it hummed with tense energy. Jasmine sat at a scarred metal desk, surrounded by strangers who were quickly becoming allies. The raid on your grandmother's apartment wasn't random, explained Carmen Rodriguez, Jasmine's former AP computer science teacher. Fired 6 months earlier for curriculum disagreements, after advocating for more diverse student recruitment, Ms. Rodriguez had reached out through an encrypted message passed by a hospital nurse caring for Elaine Taylor. You exposed a thread of their operation, and now they're unraveling, Rodriguez continued, projecting documents onto a peeling wall. The Westridge Preservation Society isn't just a historical organization. It's the power structure that's controlled the county for decades. Around the table sat 6 others, members of what they called the Digital Justice Collective. Zach, a former IT administrator for the courthouse who was fired after questioning security protocols. Aisha, a journalist whose investigation into county housing discrimination mysteriously vanished from her newspaper's website. Michael, whose brother was serving 20 years for a crime identical to one where a white defendant received probation in Whitmore's court. Layla, a nurse who documented suspicious patterns in hospital care quality correlating with patients' race and income. Tony, a former real estate agent who refused to participate in neighborhood demographic engineering. And Darius, a tall, quiet man who had been recording evidence of the group's discriminatory practices for 3 years. You're not the first victim of their system, Darius told Jasmine, just the first to break through to national attention. For the next 2 hours, the group walked Jasmine through their collected evidence. Systematic expulsions of minority students from Westridge schools. Property tax assessments that varied dramatically based on homeowners' race. Medical errors affecting specific demographics. Court sentencing disparities that couldn't be explained by any factor except race. The society began in the 1940s as an explicit effort to keep Westridge exclusive, Rodriguez explained. Over decades, they became more sophisticated, embedding members in every institution: schools, courts, police, hospital administration, real estate, banking. Their current project is called Reclamation, Zach added, pulling up internal emails he'd archived before his termination. They've partnered with Pinnacle Development to revitalize neighborhoods, which really means pricing out minority residents and replacing them with wealthy white families. Aisha pointed to a map with expanding zones highlighted in red. Over the past 5 years, they've pushed over 300 Black and Hispanic families out of Westridge. Your grandmother's housing complex is next on their list. Jasmine felt dizzy processing it all. But why target me so aggressively? I'm just one student. Because you found financial evidence, Tony explained. Those scholarship funds you discovered being diverted? That's just the surface. They're laundering millions through the school foundation. And because you showed others it's possible to fight back, Darius added quietly. That's what terrifies them most. Using borrowed equipment and security measures that would impress government agencies, Jasmine established a secure communication channel with Marcus, who had taken refuge with an anonymous hacker collective in another state. Together, they began correlating the Digital Justice Collective's evidence with county financial records, building a comprehensive picture of corruption. The patterns were undeniable. For 15 years, Judge Whitmore had ruled favorably in every case involving Pinnacle Development or its subsidiaries. Police Chief Garrison had directed increased patrols and arrests in neighborhoods slated for revitalization just before property values dropped. Principal Stevens had systematically pushed out minority students through questionable disciplinary actions, maintaining the school's desirable demographics for wealthy families. They're not just racist, Jasmine realized, staring at the data visualizations Marcus had created. They're running a criminal enterprise disguised as community leadership. Just as the group was preparing evidence packages for federal authorities, a warning came from one of Zach's courthouse contacts. Someone had accessed their secure communication channel. Their location had been compromised. "We have minutes, not hours," Rodriguez warned, initiating emergency protocols. Hard drives were encrypted, documents secured in waterproof containers, communication devices wiped. Jasmine was halfway out the back door with Darius when the building's perimeter alarms triggered. Police cruisers screeched to a halt outside, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. "Split up," Rodriguez ordered, pressing a USB drive into Jasmine's hand. "Alternative rendezvous in 24 hours. Remember your route." As Jasmine and Darius slipped away through a maintenance tunnel, she heard the crash of the front door being breached. When they emerged blocks away, they watched from the shadows, as Rodriguez was roughly handcuffed and placed in a police car. "They're arresting her," Jasmine whispered in horror. "We have to help." Darius pulled her further into the shadows. "We help by staying free and getting the evidence out. That's what she was protecting." Hours later, browsing a public library, computer through layers of anonymization, they found the news. Carmen Rodriguez, arrested for conspiracy to commit cyber terrorism and possession of stolen government documents. The police statement claimed materials for creating explosives had been found in the community center. A complete fabrication. The Digital Justice Collective had prepared for this possibility. Members scattered to safe houses across 3 counties. Communication reduced to coded messages through seemingly unrelated online platforms. But their work continued. Federal agencies received anonymous evidence packages detailing the Westridge Preservation Society's activities. Journalists outside local control were contacted with verified documentation. And Jasmine, moving between safe locations every 48 hours, continued building the case that would expose it all, if she survived long enough to present it. 3 weeks after the courthouse incident, Jasmine sat in a nondescript coffee shop 2 counties away, using public Wi-Fi through multiple proxies. The secure tablet Darius had provided displayed a breaking news alert that made her hands shake. With cautious hope, federal investigation launched into Westridge County judicial misconduct. According to the report, the FBI's Civil Rights Division had opened a formal investigation into Judge Harrison Whitmore and other Westridge officials following receipt of substantial documentation alleging systematic civil rights violations and corruption. More importantly, the article noted, Judge Whitmore has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. All current cases in his docket will be reassigned to judges from neighboring districts. Jasmine allowed herself a small smile, the first in weeks. The evidence packages they'd compiled had reached the right people and been taken seriously. An independent federal team would now have authority to access records, conduct interviews, and potentially uncover the full extent of the Preservation Society's activities. Her burner phone vibrated with an encrypted message from Marcus. Phase 1 successful. WPS in panic mode. Stay vigilant. That same afternoon, an anonymous courthouse employee contacted Diana Chen through a secure channel established by the Digital Justice Collective. The whistleblower provided internal emails showing how Whitmore, Chief Garrison, and DA Thompson had coordinated their response to Jasmine's viral video, including fabricating evidence and planning to intimidate witnesses. There are others inside who know what's happening is wrong, the whistleblower's message concluded. Not everyone in the system is corrupt. With Whitmore on leave and federal investigators arriving, Jasmine decided it was finally safe to visit her grandmother in the hospital. Elaine Taylor had suffered a stress-induced stroke during the police raid and had been hospitalized ever since. While her condition had stabilized, she remained weak and required constant care. After taking elaborate precautions to ensure she wasn't followed, Jasmine slipped into the hospital room where her grandmother lay connected to monitoring equipment. The sight of the once vibrant woman, now frail and diminished, brought tears to her eyes. "Grandma," she whispered, taking Elaine's thin hand. "I'm here." Elaine's eyes fluttered open, recognition and love bringing animation to her tired face. "My brave girl," she whispered. "They told me what's happening about the federal investigation." Jasmine nodded, hope fighting with exhaustion in her voice. "It's working, Grandma. People are listening. Judge Whitmore's been suspended. Once you're better, we'll find a new place, somewhere safe." A gentle knock interrupted them. Diana Chen entered, carrying fresh flowers and good news. "Independent journalists have picked up the story," she reported. "National outlets are sending investigative teams. The narrative is shifting. You're being recognized as a whistleblower who exposed corruption, not a troublemaker." For a precious hour, they allowed themselves to believe that justice might actually prevail. Whitmore was sidelined. Federal authorities were involved. Media beyond local control was digging deeper. The truth about the Westridge Preservation Society would finally be exposed. Then Diana's phone chimed with an urgent alert from one of their courthouse sources. Her face went pale as she read the message. "The lead FBI investigator assigned to the case," she said quietly, "is Special Agent Christopher Landry. He's a former college roommate of D.A. Thompson." "That could be coincidence," Jasmine suggested. But Chen was already pulling up information on her secure tablet. Landry and Thompson were in the same fraternity. They've maintained connections. Landry's wife sits on a charitable foundation with Thompson's wife. And 3 years ago, Landry gave a speech at a Westridge County fundraiser. The implication was clear. Whitmore and his allies had reached into federal law enforcement. The investigation might be genuine, or it might be controlled opposition, a show of accountability that would ultimately clear all involved. As this realization sank in, a hospital orderly entered with medication for Elaine. Something about his movements caught Jasmine's attention, a slight hesitation, eyes that lingered too long on her face, a hand that reached toward his pocket rather than the IV. "Diana," Jasmine said quietly, moving between the man and her grandmother. "I think we need to check if this medication was properly ordered." The orderly's expression hardened. In one fluid motion, he produced not medication but a syringe with an unusual color liquid and lunged toward Elaine's IV port. Chen reacted instantly, swinging her heavy leather briefcase into the man's arm. The syringe clattered to the floor as Jasmine hit the emergency call button. The orderly, clearly no medical professional, bolted from the room. Security footage would later show him being picked up outside by an unmarked car registered to the Westridge County Police Department. Analysis of the discarded syringe revealed a compound that would have caused cardiac arrest, virtually undetectable in standard toxicology screening. "They tried to kill my grandmother," Jasmine whispered in horror as they relocated Elaine to a different hospital under a false name. With private security, Chen hastily arranged through out-of-state contacts. That night, as Jasmine secured yet another temporary safe house, Marcus called with more troubling news. The evidence packages sent to the FBI had mysteriously vanished from the case file. Digital records had been altered to remove key documents, and the hospital medication error that had initially worsened Elaine's condition showed the same chemical signature as the compound in the fake orderly's syringe. "They're cleaning house," Marcus concluded grimly, "and they have help at every level." Jasmine leaned against the wall, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. What had started as a fight against racist treatment at school had revealed layer upon layer of corruption and criminal activity. Every apparent victory brought new, more dangerous threats. The Westridge Preservation Society's reach extended further than they'd imagined, with tentacles in federal agencies, media ownership, and even hospital administration. As she stared at the corkboard where she'd mapped the connections between WPS members and institutions, a chilling thought formed. What if taking down Judge Whitmore alone wasn't enough? What if the entire system was so corrupted that conventional justice was impossible? For the first time, Jasmine wondered if she should simply disappear, take her grandmother, and run as far as possible from Westridge County. But even as the thought formed, she knew it wouldn't end there. The society would hunt them, make examples of them, and other families would continue suffering under their control. The only path forward was to gather irrefutable evidence that not even corrupt connections could bury. something so explosive that it would force accountability regardless of who tried to interfere. And for that, she would need to go even deeper into the Preservation Society's operations, despite the escalating danger. Have you ever had that moment when you realized that everything you thought you knew about justice and protection was just an illusion? For Jasmine Taylor, that moment had stretched into weeks of nightmare that were about to get infinitely worse. The call came at 3:17 a.m., jolting Jasmine from fitful sleep on a cot in the back room of a sympathetic church pastor's home. The private nurse they'd hired for Elaine's protection was trying to keep her voice steady, but panic bled through. Something's wrong. Her vitals are crashing. The doctor says it doesn't make sense given her recovery pattern. Jasmine's world narrowed to a pinpoint of fear as she and Diana Chen raced to the suburban hospital 30 miles from Westridge, where they'd relocated Elaine under a false name. Security measures had been elaborate. Private room, vetted staff, no digital records linking to her real identity. Yet somehow, they'd been found. When they arrived, medical staff were already working frantically. Words like unexplained reaction and system failure floated above the beeping machinery and urgent commands. The attending physician pulled Chen aside while Jasmine clung to her grandmother's unresponsive hand, whispering desperate pleas. "We found anomalies in her medication drip," the doctor explained in hushed tones. "The concentration was 10 times the prescribed amount. We're trying to counteract it, but given her age and weakened state." Hours passed in a haze of hope and despair as Elaine's vital signs fluctuated. A hospital security review revealed a brief power outage affecting only their wing the previous night, just long enough for security cameras to go dark for 6 minutes. During that window, someone had accessed Elaine's room. By dawn, Jasmine knew she was saying goodbye. As machines recorded her grandmother's failing heartbeat, she leaned close to the withered face that had always shown her unconditional love. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "This happened because of me." Elaine's eyes fluttered open one last time, focusing on Jasmine with surprising clarity. Her paper-dry lips formed words too faint for anyone else to hear. "Not because of you, because of them. Don't let them win." At 7:42 a.m., Elaine Taylor was pronounced dead. The official cause would be listed as complications from her stroke, but everyone in that room knew the truth. She had been murdered. Numb with grief and exhaustion, Jasmine could barely process Chen's urgent whispers as they left the hospital through a service entrance to avoid the news crews somehow already gathering at the main doors. "Jasmine, listen to me. The ownership. Records Diana checked. This hospital is part of Regional Health Partners, a subsidiary of Westshire Holdings." "What does that mean?" Jasmine asked, her mind struggling to focus. Westshire Holdings is the investment group owned by the Whitmore family. They control this hospital, just like the one in Westridge. The implication struck Jasmine like physical blow. There was nowhere safe. The Preservation Society's influence extended far beyond what they'd imagined, with financial tentacles reaching into supposedly independent institutions counties away. Elaine's funeral was held 3 days later at a small chapel outside Westridge County. Despite attempts to keep the location private, police vehicles appeared just as the service began, officers entering with manufactured solemnity. "Security concerns," the ranking officer announced to the small gathering of mourners, mostly members of the Digital Justice Collective and former students of Elaine, who'd been a beloved teacher before retirement. The officers positioned themselves throughout the chapel, recording attendees with body cameras, creating an atmosphere of intimidation that turned the memorial into a surveillance operation. When Jasmine rose to speak about her grandmother, 2 officers moved closer, standing intimidatingly at the edge of the dais. She looked out at the chapel, at friends afraid to make eye contact with her, at the predatory gaze of officers who represented not protection, but threat. In that moment, something hardened inside her. The grief remained, vast and consuming, but alongside it grew a cold, precise resolve. That night, she received devastating news from a contact within the FBI. The evidence package they'd sent, containing documentation of the Preservation Society's decades of discrimination, financial crimes, and civil rights violations, had vanished from the secure evidence room. The agent who'd been sympathetic to their cause had been abruptly reassigned to Alaska. The internal investigation was being redirected to focus on fraudulent claims against respected judicial figures, rather than the substance of those claims. As if orchestrated to coincide with this setback, Marcus was attacked, leaving a secure meeting point. 3 men in masks beat him severely before first responders arrived, leaving him hospitalized with a fractured skull and internal bleeding. Security cameras in the area had mysteriously malfunctioned just before the attack. Standing beside Marcus's hospital bed, watching her brilliant cousin fight for his life through machines and monitors too similar to those that had failed to save her grandmother, Jasmine made a decision. The system they were fighting, legal channels, official investigations, institutional remedies, was too corrupted to provide justice. "I need to go completely underground," she told Diana Chen. "No phones, no internet, no contact with anyone. They might be watching." Chen shook her head. "That's exactly what they want, to isolate you, silence you." "No," Jasmine replied, a new determination in her voice. "They want me broken or dead. But I'm going to become something else entirely. A ghost in their system. They've taken everything from me. Now there's nothing left to lose." Over the following weeks, Jasmine Taylor disappeared, at least in any conventional sense. Using techniques Marcus had taught her, she operated from abandoned buildings, using borrowed equipment and rotating proxy servers. She slept in different locations each night, accepted help only from strangers with no connection to her previous life, and communicated through a complex relay system that even Chen couldn't fully track. Her objective was singular: access the Westridge Preservation Society's private server. Marcus had discovered references to it in encrypted communications between members, suggesting it contained the complete historical records of the organization, meeting minutes, membership rolls, financial transactions, and strategic plans spanning decades. After 3 failed attempts that nearly led to her capture, Jasmine finally breached the server's formidable security. What she found exceeded even her darkest expectations. Video recordings of society meetings going back 5 years, explicit discussions of demographic cleansing and community purification, Judge Whitmore, Police Chief Garrison, and dozens of other officials planning coordinated harassment campaigns against minority residents. Spreadsheets tracking families targeted for removal from Westridge, with progress indicators and methods, ranging from economic pressure to legal entanglement to health intervention. A chilling euphemism she now understood all too well. Most damning were recordings from just 2 weeks earlier, an emergency meeting where society members explicitly discussed the Taylor problem. Judge Whitmore's voice was unmistakable as he instructed. The grandmother was a warning. "If that doesn't silence her, we move to final measures. The preservation of Westridge depends on it." Police Chief Garrison had added, "We've got assets in 3 counties ready to assist. This ends now, one way or another." Hands shaking with a combination of rage, vindication, and terror, Jasmine compiled the evidence into multiple secure packages. This wasn't just about racial bias in a courthouse now. This was conspiracy, corruption, and what any reasonable person would recognize as orchestrated hate crimes, potentially even murder. As she prepared to send the evidence to every major news outlet, federal agency, and civil rights organization, simultaneously, Jasmine allowed herself one bittersweet thought. "Grandma, this is for you. They didn't win. They won't win." What would you do if you discovered the people sworn to uphold justice were actually orchestrating hate crimes? Comment number 1, if you think Jasmine should release all evidence immediately to the public, or number 2, if she should try one more time to work through official channels. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see corrupt systems exposed and justice served. But as Jasmine prepares to release her bombshell evidence, the Westridge Preservation Society is closing in. Will she survive long enough to expose the truth? And even if the evidence gets out, will anyone powerful enough to make a difference actually act on it? The warning came from an unexpected source, an anonymous text to one of the burner phones Jasmine rarely used, containing only 2 words: "Leave now." She had just enough time to grab her backpack and slip out the rear exit of the abandoned storage unit she'd been using as a temporary workspace before police vehicles swarmed the area. officers in tactical gear pouring out with weapons drawn. From the safety of distance, watching through a pair of binoculars, she saw them raid the empty space with a level of force that would have been lethal had she still been inside. This wasn't an arrest attempt, it was an execution squad. Hours later, every screen in Westridge County simultaneously broadcast the same urgent message. A county-wide cyber attack had crippled essential services, compromising everything from traffic systems to hospital networks. And authorities had identified the perpetrator, Jasmine Taylor, now classified as a domestic terrorist. Her school ID photo appeared on news channels, social media, and electronic billboards, alongside warnings that she was armed, dangerous, and mentally unstable. The Westridge County Emergency Broadcast System, normally reserved for natural disasters, issued alerts to citizens' phones with instructions to report any sightings immediately. "This is a sophisticated frame job," Darius explained during their emergency meeting in the back room of a sympathetic church 3 counties away. The Digital Justice Collective had been forced to scatter after coordinated raids targeted known members. "They've manufactured digital evidence showing you orchestrated the attack." "But I didn't do anything," Jasmine protested. "They don't need you to have done it," Diana Chen said grimly. "They just need a plausible technical explanation and your face as the villain. Most people won't question it, especially with the reputation they've already built for you as a hacker." The scope of the frame-up became clear as more details emerged. The cyber attack had been precisely targeted to cause maximum public fear, while doing minimal actual damage to systems controlled by Preservation Society members. Traffic disruption specifically affected minority neighborhoods. Hospital glitches delayed care for non-white patients. School records for white students remained intact while those for minority students showed mysterious corruptions. It was the perfect cover. Create a crisis that reinforced existing biases while providing an excuse for the differential impact. And Jasmine, already portrayed in local media as a vengeful troublemaker, was the perfect scapegoat. The FBI, which had been investigating Whitmore, abruptly shifted focus. Agent Landry, who had connections to Westridge officials, now led a manhunt for Jasmine. The evidence she'd compiled against the Preservation Society was dismissed as fabrications designed to distract from her crimes. Chen herself became a target. The State Bar Association, responding to serious allegations, suspended her license pending an ethics investigation. Without legal standing, she could no longer represent clients or access court resources. Yet she continued working, using her network of contacts to help Jasmine navigate the increasingly dangerous landscape. "They're trying to isolate you completely," Chen told her during a brief clandestine meeting. "Cut off every possible ally or resource." The strategy was working. Former supporters distanced themselves, afraid of being labeled accomplices to terrorism. Journalists who had previously covered the case sympathetically now questioned whether they'd been manipulated by a skilled teenaged hacker with a grudge. Digital Justice Collective members faced escalating harassment. Homes were raided, jobs, lost families threatened. Layla was fired from the hospital after anonymous complaints. Tony's real estate license was revoked for administrative violations. Aisha was informed by her newspaper that her position had been eliminated due to budget constraints. Surveillance was omnipresent. Facial recognition systems scanned crowds. Police checkpoints appeared on major roads. Drones hovered over neighborhoods, where Jasmine might seek shelter. The governor, a former law partner of Judge Whitmore, activated a special state task force with extraordinary powers to find the dangerous cyber terrorists threatening critical infrastructure. Jasmine had become the most hunted person in the state while the true criminals operated with impunity behind badges, robes, and official seals. Her closest call came when she risked visiting Marcus in the hospital, still recovering from his attack. He was being monitored around the clock, supposedly for his protection, though the officers stationed outside his room made their actual purpose clear. Disguised as a cleaning staff member, Jasmine had just minutes with her cousin before alarms sounded throughout the building. Someone had recognized her despite the uniform and cap hiding her distinctive hair. As security locked down the hospital, she was forced to flee through maintenance tunnels, narrowly escaping capture multiple times. The footage of her desperate escape, a black girl running from uniformed officers, was edited and broadcast as further evidence of her guilt, the context carefully stripped away to support the narrative of a dangerous fugitive. In her darkest moments, hiding in yet another temporary shelter, Jasmine wondered if escape was the only option left. Perhaps she could find a way across state lines, even international borders. Start a new life somewhere beyond the Preservation Society's reach. But each time that thought surfaced, she remembered her grandmother's final words. Don't let them win. She thought of Marcus, still fighting for his life because he'd helped her. Of Ms. Rodriguez, sitting in a jail cell on fabricated charges. Of all the families who had been systematically driven from their homes over decades of deliberate discrimination. Running wouldn't bring justice. Only the truth could do that. And she had it, secured in encrypted drives containing the preservation. Society's own records, their own voices planning what amounted to ethnic cleansing disguised as community improvement. The question wasn't whether to release the evidence, but how to ensure it couldn't be buried or dismissed as fabrications from a discredited source. She needed a platform beyond the reach of Westridge County influence, witnesses who couldn't be intimidated, and timing that wouldn't allow for containment. As she plotted her next move, Jasmine realized with grim clarity that she had become exactly what the Preservation Society feared most. Not just a witness to their crimes, but living proof of their methods. Each escalation of their response revealed more about how they operated. Each attempt to silence her created more evidence of the conspiracy she sought to expose. They had taken her home, her future, and her grandmother. They had turned her into a hunted fugitive in her own community. But in doing so, they had also given her the one thing she needed most, absolute conviction that exposing them wasn't just about personal justice, but about dismantling a system that had destroyed countless lives. The annual Westridge Preservation Society Gala was the social event of the season. Held at the exclusive Lakeview Country Club, it brought together the county's elite under the guise of celebrating historical conservation efforts. In reality, as Jasmine now knew from their internal documents, it served as the organization's primary strategic meeting and fundraising event. This year's theme, Securing Westridge's Future, carried particular irony given the society's actual methods. The guest list included Judge Whitmore, Police Chief Garrison, Principal Stevens, D.A. Thompson, state representatives, hospital administrators, bank executives, and real estate developers. The complete power structure that had conspired to maintain Westridge's desirable demographics through systemic discrimination. It was also the perfect opportunity for Jasmine to expose them all at once. The plan was audacious to the point of suicidal, using forged credentials created by what remained of the Digital Justice Collective. Jasmine would infiltrate the gala disguised as catering staff. Once inside, she would plant specialized microphones and cameras designed by Marcus before his attack, devices capable of transmitting encrypted signals to receivers outside the security perimeter. These would capture not just the gala's public proceedings, but the private meetings scheduled afterward in the club's secured conference room, where society members would discuss their progress and upcoming initiatives with unguarded candor. Emma Delgado, an investigative journalist with a national news network who had been quietly building her own case against Westridge officials, would be waiting nearby to receive the transmission and extract Jasmine once the evidence was secured. This is beyond dangerous, Diana Chen had argued when Jasmine revealed her plan. If they catch you, after everything they've done to frame you as a terrorist, they won't take me alive, Jasmine had replied with a coldness that shocked them both. But this might be our only chance to catch them all together, speaking freely about what they've done and what they're planning. The night of the gala arrived, with unseasonable rain that seemed appropriate to Jasmine's mood. Dressed in the black pants and white shirt of the catering company, hair hidden under a short wig, she moved through service entrances with practiced confidence, eyes downcast whenever security cameras swept the area. The first hour passed in home, a blur of serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres to the very people who had destroyed her life. Judge Whitmore accepted a canapé without a glance at her face, discussing property values with a bank executive. Police Chief Garrison laughed loudly nearby, boasting about recent security improvements in certain neighborhoods. Principal Stevens nodded along, occasionally adding comments about the school's enhanced standards. None recognized the server as the girl they'd turned into a public enemy. None suspected that the tray she carried concealed more than just food. Systematically, Jasmine worked her way through the main ballroom, placing tiny surveillance devices in flower arrangements, behind paintings, beneath tables, and inside vents, each automatically connected to a mesh network that would transmit to Emma's equipment outside. The real prize lay in accessing the conference room where the private meeting would occur. Security was tighter there. A guard checked credentials for anyone entering the hallway, and cameras covered every angle. Jasmine's opportunity came when she overheard a conversation about special dietary requirements for the head table. Volunteering to prepare the customized plates, she gained access to the private kitchen adjacent to the conference room. There, working quickly while kitchen staff were distracted with the main course preparation, she planted devices that would capture every word of the upcoming meeting. Her task nearly complete, Jasmine was preparing to exit when disaster struck. Turning to leave the kitchen, she came face to face with Judge Whitmore himself, who had entered looking for the event coordinator. For a terrible moment, their eyes met. Though her appearance was different, something in her gaze must have registered. Whitmore's expression shifted from casual impatience to focused suspicion. "You," he said slowly, studying her face. "You look familiar." Jasmine lowered her eyes, attempting to move past. "Just started this week, sir. Excuse me, I need to deliver these plates." His hand shot out, gripping her arm. "No, I know those eyes. Security," he shouted, reaching for his phone with his free hand. Jasmine reacted instantly, slamming the tray of plates into his chest. As fine china shattered and food splattered his expensive suit, she bolted through the kitchen's rear exit. Alarms blared seconds later, security personnel converging from all directions. What followed was a desperate chase through service corridors, storage rooms, and finally the rain-soaked grounds of the country club. Security guards and off-duty police officers attending the gala joined the pursuit, some drawing weapons despite the presence of civilians. A bullet grazed Jasmine's shoulder as she vaulted a decorative hedge, pain blossoming hot and sharp. Another shot splintered bark near her head as she darted between trees. The carefully planned extraction route to Emma's position seemed impossibly distant now. Cornered near the service entrance to the club's golf course, Jasmine faced a terrible choice: surrender to people who had already tried to kill her, or risk a desperate dash across open ground under potential fire. As she hesitated, bleeding and exhausted, illuminated by security floodlights, a maintenance golf cart roared around the corner, driven by an elderly groundskeeper who showed no recognition of the unfolding drama. In a split-second decision, Jasmine sprinted toward the vehicle, leaping aboard as it passed and forcing the startled worker aside. The electric cart couldn't match the speed of the security vehicles that quickly gave chase, but it allowed Jasmine to reach the perimeter fence where Emma waited in a nondescript sedan. Abandoning the cart, she sprinted the final distance, bullets kicking up dirt at her heels. Emma's car peeled away seconds after Jasmine collapsed into the passenger seat, her white server's shirt now stained crimson from the bullet wound. "Did you get it?" Emma asked urgently, navigating rain-slicked roads at dangerous speeds, police sirens wailing behind them. Jasmine nodded weakly, blood loss making her lightheaded. "The devices are all active. If they don't find them, we'll have everything." "They'll block roads," Emma warned, taking a sharp turn onto a service road. "I've got a plan B, but it's risky." That plan B was an abandoned industrial building on the county line, where a trusted colleague waited with medical supplies and satellite communication equipment. If they could reach it, they could receive the surveillance transmissions and broadcast them immediately to the network's secure server, beyond the reach of local interference. But Westridge County had mobilized with unprecedented speed. Police roadblocks appeared at major intersections. Helicopters with searchlights crisscrossed the area. The manhunt had expanded to include not just Jasmine but anyone helping her, now characterized as accomplices to domestic terrorism. Reaching the building seemed miraculous in itself. Inside, Emma's colleague, a former combat medic, worked to stabilize Jasmine's wound while Emma established the satellite uplink. The surveillance devices were working perfectly, capturing the emergency meeting now taking place at the gala, as society members discussed how to respond to the security breach. "She knows everything," Judge Whitmore's voice came through with crystal clarity. "If this gets out, we're finished. Not just our positions, everything. Then we make sure it doesn't get out," Police Chief Garrison replied. "I've ordered a complete communication blackout of the county. Nothing leaves without our approval." "What about the girl?" asked Principal Stevens. "Shoot on sight," Garrison said flatly. "We'll call it self-defense. She's already a terrorist as far as the public's concerned." As they listened in horror to officials openly discussing her execution, Emma worked frantically to upload the surveillance feed. But Garrison's communication blackout was already taking effect. Cell signals jammed, internet connections severed, satellite uplinks detected and blocked by military-grade equipment that shouldn't have been in civilian police hands. "They're cutting us off," Emma realized, watching connection attempts fail repeatedly. "We need to record everything locally and physically transport it out of their jurisdiction." But time was running out. Police scanner traffic indicated their location had been compromised. SWAT teams were converging, with Chief Garrison personally directing operations. Jasmine, growing weaker from blood loss despite the medics' efforts, made a desperate decision. Using the building's landline, overlooked in the digital communications blackout, she called Diana Chen. "We're surrounded," she said without preamble. "But we have everything: video, audio, their own voices planning hate crimes, discussing my grandmother's death, ordering my execution." "Where are you?" Chen demanded. "I'll bring help." "No time. Listen carefully." Jasmine gave precise details about the encrypted drives, cloud storage addresses, and authentication procedures needed to access all the evidence she'd compiled, not just from tonight, but everything gathered over the past months. "If I don't make it," she finished, "make them pay. Make it all public." "Jasmine, wait." But the call ended as spotlight swept the building's exterior. Surrounded, injured, and with escape routes blocked, Jasmine turned to Emma and her colleague. "You didn't sign up for this," she said. "If you identify yourselves as press, they might let you live." Emma shook her head. "If we surrender, this evidence disappears. We need to broadcast whatever we can, while we can." Using the building's outdated PA system, they rigged a makeshift recording studio. As SWAT teams positioned around the perimeter and snipers took aim from adjacent rooftops, Jasmine Taylor delivered her final testimony, a comprehensive account of everything she'd uncovered about the West Ridge Preservation Society, their decades of systematic discrimination, and the crimes committed to protect their power. "My name is Jasmine Taylor," she began, voice steady despite her weakening condition. "If you're hearing this, I may already be dead. But the truth can't be killed." Dawn broke over the abandoned industrial complex with the harsh glare of police spotlights and the rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors. Inside the decaying brick building, Jasmine, Emma, and Emma's colleague David huddled behind makeshift barricades, surrounded by the electronic equipment that now contained explosive evidence against Westridge County's most powerful figures. Outside, through shattered windows, they could see the massive police response. SWAT teams in tactical gear, armored vehicles, snipers positioned on adjacent rooftops. Leading the operation was Police Chief Garrison himself, barking orders through a bullhorn. "Jasmine Taylor, you are surrounded. Exit the building with your hands visible. This is your only warning." Emma peered through a cracked door. "They've got news vans behind the police line, local affiliates only, the ones controlled by Whitmore's brother-in-law. Convenient witnesses to whatever story they plan to tell," David muttered, checking Jasmine's bandaged shoulder. The bleeding had slowed, but she was pale from blood loss and exhaustion. "They'll claim I was armed, dangerous, resisting arrest," Jasmine said, wincing as she shifted position. Standard playbook when they execute someone they've already demonized. Their attempts to transmit the gala recordings remained blocked by police jammers. Physical escape seemed impossible with the building completely surrounded. Their last, desperate hope lay in stalling long enough for Diana Chen to activate their contingency plan, using the evidence Jasmine had already secured to force intervention from authorities beyond Westridge's influence. A crash from the east side of the building signaled the first breach attempt. Tear gas canisters rolled across the concrete floor, filling the air with caustic clouds. "Gas masks," David ordered, distributing the limited protective gear he'd brought, and moved to the secondary position. They retreated deeper into the building's maze-like interior, where they'd prepared a more defensible space with multiple escape routes. The tear gas pursuit forced them to abandon most of their equipment, though Emma managed to save the crucial hard drives containing the surveillance recordings. "Chief Garrison," a new voice rang out through a megaphone outside. "This is Diana Chen with Federal Court Order 47B329. You are directed to stand down immediately and allow federal marshals to take custody of the building and all persons inside." Through a grime-streaked window, they saw Chen standing fearlessly before the police line, holding official documents aloft while uniformed federal marshals flanked her. Behind them, news vans from national networks had somehow broken through the county's media blockade. For a moment, hope flared. Then Chief Garrison snatched the court order, making a show of examining it before deliberately tearing it in half. "This is a Westridge County operation, Ms. Chen. Your license is suspended, and this paper isn't worth the ink it's printed on. Federal jurisdiction doesn't apply to domestic terrorism incidents." "That's not how jurisdiction works, and you know it," Chen shouted, but marshals were already being forced back by county officers. Inside, Jasmine's heart sank. Even with a federal court order, Garrison was refusing to yield control. Whatever happened next, he intended to ensure no witnesses remained. "They're jamming all transmissions," Emma said, desperately trying to establish any connection to the outside world. "We can't even live-stream what's happening." The building shuddered as battering rams hit multiple entrances simultaneously. SWAT teams poured in, forcing them to retreat further. Their final refuge was a former security office with reinforced walls and limited access points. Defensible, but also a potential tomb if things went wrong. Outside, the situation escalated as national media captured the confrontation between federal marshals and county police. The standoff was being broadcast. Live across the country, Chen had succeeded in ensuring witnesses to whatever happened next. Inside the building, tactical teams methodically cleared room after room, converging on their position. Through security monitors still functioning on backup power, they watched the coordinated assault with grim resignation. "They're not taking anyone alive," David observed as teams disabled surveillance cameras in each secured area. A new development appeared on the monitors, smoke billowing from the east wing. What began as a thin haze quickly became roaring flames. "They've set the building on fire," Emma realized in horror. "They're going to burn us out, or claim we died in an accidental fire during the standoff." The blaze spread with unnatural speed, suggesting accelerants had been planted in advance. This wasn't an accident or even a spontaneous decision. It was part of a planned elimination strategy. Heat and smoke soon made their position untenable. Choking and desperate, they faced an impossible choice: die from smoke inhalation or fire, or emerge to face armed officers with shoot-to-kill orders. "Emma?" Jasmine rasped through her gas mask, pressing the hard drives into the journalist's hands. "You have to survive. The evidence is what matters." "We're not leaving you," Emma insisted. "I'll create a diversion," Jasmine countered. "There's a maintenance tunnel we mapped. It might still be clear of both fire and police. Take it. Get the drives out." "Jasmine, my grandmother died for this. Marcus is in a coma. Ms. Rodriguez is in prison. Hundreds of families lost their homes. This is bigger than me now." The argument ended when part of the ceiling collapsed nearby, sending sparks and burning debris across their shelter. The decision made itself. They had minutes, not hours, before the entire structure became an inferno. Guided by building schematics they'd memorized, they navigated through increasingly dense smoke toward the maintenance tunnel. Just before the final turn, Jasmine stumbled, overcome by smoke and blood loss. As Emma and David moved to help her, she shook her head. "Go, I'll draw them away from the tunnel entrance." Before they could protest further, she staggered in the opposite direction, deliberately making noise to attract attention from the tactical teams. Through tears and smoke, Emma and David watched her disappear into the haze, a 16-year-old girl sacrificing herself to expose the truth about the system that had tried to destroy her. They escaped through the maintenance tunnel moments before it too was engulfed in flames. Emerging blocks away, they were immediately surrounded, not by county police, but by federal agents who had established a secondary perimeter beyond Garrison's control. From this safe distance, they watched in horror as the building became a raging inferno. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting images of county officers preventing fire teams from approaching, while Police Chief Garrison directed operations with cold efficiency. Then came the moment that would be replayed on news broadcasts worldwide. Jasmine Taylor, stumbling from a smoke-filled exit, hands raised in clear surrender despite her injuries. The SWAT team's response was immediate and shocking, not to secure a surrendering suspect, but to rush her with overwhelming force, weapons raised. What happened next depended on which camera angle you watched. County-approved footage showed a scuffle where officers claimed Jasmine resisted, but national network cameras captured the truth, a deliberate, brutal takedown of an injured teenager offering no resistance. As she was handcuffed and dragged to a police vehicle, Jasmine locked eyes with a network camera. Blood streaked her face, but her expression conveyed not defeat, but determination. A silent message to viewers that she had accepted this moment as part of a larger battle. The vehicle that took her away didn't head toward the county jail, but back toward the courthouse, Judge Whitmore's domain, for what they intended to be a closed proceeding that would bury both Jasmine and the truth forever. What Westridge officials didn't realize was that their own actions had just been broadcast live to millions of viewers nationwide. The burning building, the excessive force, the deliberate interference with federal authorities, all captured from multiple angles by news helicopters they couldn't jam or control. And somewhere in the chaos, a flash drive containing copies of everything had already reached Diana Chen, who was now speaking directly to the state attorney general as Emma and David were escorted to safety by federal agents. The stage was set for a final confrontation in the same courtroom where Jasmine had first been forced to kneel, but this time with the eyes of the nation watching. Judge Harrison Whitmore's courtroom had been hastily prepared for an emergency hearing. Despite the early hour, every seat was filled with Westridge officials, their expressions grim but determined. This would be a closed proceeding. No public, no media, no federal observers. Just the power structure that had controlled the county for decades, gathered to eliminate their final problem. Jasmine Taylor entered in handcuffs, escorted by Officers Brandt and Delaney. Her white server's uniform from the gala was now stained with blood, soot, and tears from the confrontation at the industrial building. Despite this, she walked with her head high, taking in the assembled faces. Judge Whitmore at his bench, Police Chief Garrison standing near the bailiff, D.A. Thompson shuffling papers at the prosecution table. Diana Chen was conspicuously absent, having been barred from the courthouse by armed deputies. There would be no defense attorney, no due process, no record of whatever happened next. Ms. Taylor, Judge Whitmore began, not bothering with formal procedures. Given the extraordinary circumstances and the clear danger you present to this community, this hearing will determine your immediate detention pending terrorism charges. Jasmine said nothing, surveying the room with quiet intensity. Before we proceed, Whitmore continued, you will demonstrate appropriate respect for this court. He nodded to the officers. On your knees. Just as they had months earlier, Officers Brandt and Delaney forced Jasmine down, her injuries making her gasp in pain as her knees hit the marble floor. The assembled officials watched with cold satisfaction, believing this final humiliation marked their victory. None noticed the courthouse's electronic systems subtly changing status, security screens flickering, digital displays momentarily glitching. None saw the tiny indicator lights on their phones showing all signals were now being intercepted. As Jasmine knelt, the massive display screen normally used for evidence presentation suddenly illuminated. Judge Whitmore looked up in irritation, then froze in shock. The screen showed him, recorded just hours earlier at the Preservation Society Gala, speaking openly about eliminating problems and maintaining Westridge's special character. Beside him, Police Chief Garrison discussed fabricating evidence against troublemakers who threatened their control. Every screen in the courthouse simultaneously activated, each showing different footage from the surveillance devices Jasmine had planted. Conference rooms, judges' chambers, jury rooms, all displayed damning evidence of the conspiracy. "What is this?" Whitmore shouted, slamming his gavel. "Bailiff, shut those off immediately." But the bailiff stood transfixed, watching a screen showing his own captain instructing officers to plant evidence in minority suspects' homes. Throughout the building, courthouse staff, early arriving attorneys, and even other judges stopped to stare at the incontrovertible evidence of corruption playing on every display. In the courtroom, the footage shifted to the most damning clip. The Preservation Society's inner circle explicitly discussing Elaine Taylor's death, with Judge Whitmore saying, "The medication adjustment was regrettable but necessary. We needed to show there are consequences for challenging us." As chaos erupted, the courtroom doors burst open. FBI Special Agent Catherine Winters entered, flanked by agents in tactical gear. Not Christopher Landry, who'd been compromised, but the head of the Civil Rights Division herself. Judge Harrison Whitmore, Police Chief Robert Garrison, District Attorney Victor Thompson, she announced formally. "You are under arrest for civil rights violations, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessories to murder." Behind her came Diana Chen, now accompanied by Marcus Taylor in a wheelchair, recovered enough from his injuries to execute the masterstroke they'd planned. A computer genius, even from his hospital bed, he had created a program that would simultaneously hijack every screen in the courthouse and broadcast the evidence Jasmine had risked everything to gather. Throughout the building, arrests were being made as federal agents secured officials implicated in the surveillance footage. The Westridge Preservation Society's decades of control collapsed in minutes, as their own words condemned them. Jasmine rose slowly from her kneeling position, officers too stunned to stop her. She walked directly to Judge Whitmore as federal agents handcuffed him. "My grandmother said not to let you win," she said quietly. "This is for her, and for every family you forced out, every career you destroyed, every life you damaged thinking you'd never face consequences." Whitmore's face contorted with rage. "You have no idea what you've done. We built this community. We protected it from becoming like every other failed neighborhood. Without us, everything falls apart." "No," Jasmine replied. "Without you, everything can finally heal." As Whitmore was led away, the courtroom erupted in applause from staffers and citizens who had lived under the society's oppression for years. Someone began chanting, "Justice for Jasmine," and others joined in until the sound filled the courthouse. 6 months later, Jasmine Taylor stood before a congressional hearing on judicial reform. Her testimony part of nationwide efforts to address systemic discrimination in local justice systems. The Westridge case had become a landmark, exposing how deeply prejudice could entrench itself in institutions meant to protect all citizens equally. What began as a simple case of being falsely accused at a school hackathon revealed a decades-long conspiracy of racial discrimination, financial crimes, and abuse of power, she testified. "When I challenged that system, its full weight came down on me and my family. My grandmother paid with her life. Others lost homes, careers, and safety." The investigation had expanded far beyond Westridge County. Judge Whitmore, Police Chief Garrison, DA Thompson, Principal Stevens, and 27 other officials now faced federal charges ranging from civil rights violations to conspiracy and murder. The Westridge Preservation Society's records, secured from their hidden server, provided evidence of similar operations in communities across multiple states. Westridge itself was transformed. A complete leadership overhaul brought the first Black district attorney in county history. The school board now included diverse voices previously excluded. Families who had been forced out through discriminatory practices were offered paths to return with compensation for their losses. In her grandmother's honor, Jasmine established the Elaine Taylor Memorial Scholarship for minority students pursuing careers in law, government, and technology, funded by the civil settlements from officials who had destroyed so many lives. Diana Chen was appointed to a judicial review board examining cases handled by Whitmore and his associates, working to overturn unjust verdicts and sentences that had disproportionately affected minority defendants. Marcus recovered fully, his technical brilliance now directed toward developing security systems for protecting whistleblowers and witnesses in corruption cases. And Jasmine herself, accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, focused her studies on algorithmic justice, developing software that could detect patterns of bias in judicial decisions and prevent others from suffering as she had. On a crisp autumn day before leaving for college, Jasmine visited her grandmother's grave. The simple headstone bore Elaine's favorite quote, "Justice delayed is justice denied." "We did it, Grandma," Jasmine said softly, placing fresh flowers beside the marker. "They didn't win, and because of what happened to us, they won't win against others either." As she walked away, her phone pinged with a notification. The Justice Department had just announced a nationwide initiative to investigate judicial discrimination, using methods inspired by the Westridge case. The program would be named Project Elaine, in honor of the grandmother whose death had helped expose a system of injustice. In that moment, Jasmine understood that their struggle had created something powerful and lasting, a template for challenging corruption that would continue long after the headlines faded. What began with her forced to kneel on a courtroom floor had transformed into a movement that would help countless others stand tall. The path to justice wasn't just about punishing those who had wronged her. It was about changing systems to prevent others from suffering the same fate. And in that ongoing work, Elaine Taylor's spirit lived on, in her granddaughter, and in every person who now had tools to fight back against institutions that failed to protect them. Jasmine Taylor's journey teaches us that systemic injustice often runs deeper than individual incidents of racism. What began as discrimination at a school competition revealed an entire power structure designed to maintain inequality. This story demonstrates how institutions meant to protect citizens, courts, police, schools, can become weapons against those who challenge the status quo. The Westridge Preservation Society represents how racism can disguise itself as community preservation or maintaining standards while perpetuating discrimination. The story also highlights the courage required to stand against corruption. Despite losing her grandmother, her home, and nearly her life, Jasmine persisted in seeking justice. Her resilience reminds us that change often demands extraordinary sacrifice from ordinary people. Technology emerges as both a threat and tool for justice. The same surveillance systems used to control can expose wrongdoing when redirected. Jasmine's technical skills allowed her to gather evidence that traditional legal channels couldn't access. Perhaps most importantly, this narrative illustrates that accountability requires collective action. Jasmine succeeded not alone, but with support from the Digital Justice Collective, Diana Chen, Marcus, and eventually federal authorities. When corruption is systemic, the response must be equally comprehensive. The transformation of Westridge County proves that entrenched systems can change when exposed to light. New leadership, diverse voices, and structural reforms began healing decades of discrimination, suggesting that even the most deeply rooted injustice can be overcome through persistence, strategy, and solidarity. What systems of inequality exist in your community that people might be afraid to challenge? Have you ever witnessed someone stand up against injustice despite overwhelming odds? Comment below with your experiences or thoughts on how we can better support those fighting for equality in our institutions. If Jasmine's story of courage in the face of systemic racism resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that expose the hidden mechanisms of discrimination. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration to keep fighting for what's right, even when the entire system seems stacked against them. Thank you for witnessing Jasmine's journey from victim to victor. And remember, as Elaine Taylor believed, justice delayed is justice denied, but persistent truth-telling can ultimately break through even the most powerful corruption.